Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I got a couple questions with regards to, I was talking with one of my small business people last week, and he was kind of frustrated with the process to the point where he said, I asked him if he had his patent, if he had his process patent, and he said no. He said one of the things that concerns me is the fact when you put it in the patent out there, it allows everybody to see what you just did. And all they have to do is tweak it just a little bit so that they can go out and have their own patent on your own product. Do you see something like that as a problem with your own particular areas of interest? Any of you?
Hi, yes, obviously that is a consideration that everybody has. Essentially the patent process, you have, after 18 months, your patent is published at some point, and people can read it. And I think that you have to think about, from the perspective of what is the patent system about. It is really about trying to drive innovation. So if people are able to read your patent and then develop a significant leap forward, then the world needs that leap forward. The big issue is whether people can just read your patent and go out and copy your work. And the truth is the time between when the patent is published and when the patent is released, during that time you cannot do anything to discourage a potential competitor. It used to be the time that you had published your patent and your patent was issued was the time that you established your market leadership and you traveled down the learning curve to get better at your technology before somebody else did. And right now, with the huge gap of time between when the patent is published and when they're issued, you don't have that time to earn that market leadership anymore.
I'd also like to comment if I could,
yeah.
sir. They have another option. Trade secrets exist specifically for that sort of concern. Coca-Cola never published or patented its recipe, and it jealously guarded it, kept it secret, and it hasn't been duplicated. But the going public is kind of part of the trade-off of getting the protected period under a patent system.
Do you believe that the existing laws are enforced adequately, both here in this country and abroad? Or are there problems in one place or the other?
Abro doesn't actually have any patents. I'm just
intellectual property, either way.
I think it is getting better. It's far from perfect, but more and more there are tools that you can work with to protect your own intellectual property. And so, by and large, I think we're improving yearly.
Congressman, I'll add to that. I certainly took heart from Mr. Mansfield's comments about the progress that his company has been making in markets like China. I've been working on intellectual property issues there for almost 2 decades, and I do think that there is a level of understanding that ultimately intellectual property protection will be important to China. I think it's a question of when and where will that be exercised. We work very closely with the Copyright Office in China and their enforcement authorities who are, by all accounts of my meetings, very diligent, hardworking, committed public citizens. But there are less than 20 people at the central government in China working on copyright protection industries and trademark industries for the whole of China. And so it's not a question of the ability or interest of certain people to do their jobs, but it's a question of a priority that's been placed. And so in our case, where we have digital piracy, largely within businesses, including state-owned enterprises, finding an effective remedy for enforcement, we're still a long way from that. And there are many other countries like that.
Okay, very quickly, my time's about to run out. I've got one question I would like each of you to answer very quickly, if you would, with regards to, this is a small business committee, and we're always interested in small business folks. Are the laws that deal with intellectual property, are they too cumbersome for our small businesses to work through? Are they about right? They need to be, are they too easy? They need to be enforced? Are more layers there need to be in there to help protection? Or are we need to be? If you wouldn't mind each one commenting on that.
If I may, thank you. From our perspective, I think the laws are adequate, but in some cases lack clarity. In the case that, in our story that I talked about earlier, the nexus where intellectual property and antitrust meet, for example. There's a lacking a lot of clarity of what has precedence in the case that I talked about this morning, and the situation of unintended consequences where it actually enabled the monopolist to act in violation, we think, of antitrust laws. And today, that company now has 100% market share in our marketplace.
Start by saying that for software companies, of which 97% of the firms in software in this country are small businesses, and globally 60 cents of every dollar that's spent on software around the world comes back to a U.S.-based company. I'm often asked when I travel, what's the secret? Why has that happened? And why has the U.S. been so successful? And it's really, it's at heart three things. One, sort of a culture of entrepreneurship and risk-taking. Two, a good educational system. But it's no surprise that because we've had very strong intellectual property laws in this country, that is really what's allowed us to build a market here and expand it internationally. And to me, that is the secret sauce that's missing in most other countries. So I think it works well for small business.
As a songwriter, I can say that in terms of interdicting physical counterfeited goods, pirated CDs and hard version, the government has done some good with the CHIPS program, with the FBI, the Intellectual Properties and Enforcement Commission. They're actually discussing this. But by and large, the government has ignored the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is intellectual property songs being stolen on the Internet. As an individual songwriter, there's no way in the world I can enforce my copyrights online. I have to take literally hundreds of thousands of infringers into federal court and reduce the case to a court of last resort, probably $250,000 per every case. How can I possibly do that when the people that are stealing my music are by and large 14 and 15-year-old kids who really probably stole it because they don't have a credit card, And so what do? I mean, if the government doesn't actually come in and help enforce the copyright laws on the Internet, then what we need is to have the government help us with technological solutions that will keep the piracy from happening in the first place.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.